Thanks for coming. I know it's a Friday. Everything's starting to open back up. So this might be the last opportunity for something this virtual to happen like this in a while. Maybe we could still probably keep doing stuff like this. Um, I believe it's the first time we've been doing a virtual presentation, GBM kind of stuff um, in a while or even. So clearly excited if this turns out well and if we share this across all our chapters and stuff and it gets some traction. And well, really on my end, I want to see, even if I can provide some information to even a handful of you, I count that as a win on my book. So I guess with that said, I guess we can get started. The topic for today's presentation is grad school right for you? And I'm going to be presenting it. My name is Ivan Figueroa. I'm part of the MAES LA professional chapter. I have been an alumni and heavily involved with the MAES Long Beach chapter for a really long time. I graduated back in December 2015 in aerospace engineering. And afterwards, I went and actually got my master's in astronautical engineering from USC last year, actually, which was very, very fortuitous given all that's going on at the moment. I was able to enjoy a celebration ceremony and all that, which I know a lot of you guys might not be able to do so. But yes, so I have gone through some of those hardships and pains that comes with applying and looking for a grad school. And so I'm doing this to try to sort of share the knowledge that I have and some of the insights I might be able to pass on to any of you who might be thinking of doing something similar in regards to advancing your education. All right. So these are some of the things that I plan to discuss. So we're going to be talking about the reasons to go to grad school. There's always right and wrong reasons to go, but there's always reasons too. So the types of possible programs that you might be looking at, sort of a rough overview of the application process. And we'll be asking ourselves a couple of questions to sort of see, to get the ball rolling in terms of decision making if grad school is something that's good for you. And towards the end, we're going to have a small panel of other alumni and other people that have invited to sort of give their 2 cents regarding what are some of the issues and tribulations that come with this process and this very big decision. And I mean that it can be a pretty big decision that could impact not only your livelihood, but I guess your career as well. So that said, let's move on to the first topic. Why go to grad school? It's a very good question. So there's a lot of reasons why you would want to go back and endure all the pain that you just gotten through in your 4 years of undergrad. Some of the positives that come with continuing one's education is definitely open your opportunities in your career path. Say you're a marine biologist or whatnot, you really want to be, on those shows with David Attenborough, going out in the field and doing all this research. Well, a lot of the times they hire those people based on, how much publications have they had and how have they gotten their name out there. And really, to make it in that career field, you need to have gone to graduate school and have been involved in that scientific community that is pretty much mostly prevalent in our higher education system. And apart from that, there's a lot of other opportunities that getting an advanced degree can help you out, and whether it is to reaching a particular goal in your career or to perhaps open new doors for yourself if you feel you're in a point where you may not necessarily see your career going anywhere. So that's one reason to do so. Another reason would be to increase your professional network, which for a lot of us, especially for, persons as myself, where we come from, I guess, a first generation background of, in my case, a first generation both college and immigrant to these United States, where we don't necessarily have a network of professionals that we can rely on to, get hints on career advice or, career opportunities. Going to graduate school further solidifies those network contacts that you have that you could potentially call upon for reasons such as this. um, but it helps in that aspect. And in addition to that, there's two of them that we'll be getting into a little bit more. Is you definitely have the potential to earn higher pay with an advanced education, and also to stay relevant in the job market, because having the skills and making sure that you don't put all your eggs into drafting by hand, means that will stay relevant as an engineer or a professional, whatever you're doing. So here's a point that I wanted to make out. This was a study done back by the Bureau of Labor Statistics back in 2013, and they estimated that 18% of all jobs will require a master's degree by 2022. And this was back in 2013. 18% doesn't seem a lot, but once you start taking a look at that and you compare it to a bunch of other, I guess, educational attainments, and as you see in the chart there on the left, as you can see, as time has gone on, more and more of the workforce has continuously gotten more and more educated, and a good number of the workforce is starting to become um, to a point where they have already attained a bachelor's degree. And as you can see there on the right, at this point, close to half of the workforce has some form of university degree or some form of higher education in terms of learning. Um, and it's as the trend is showing right there, this is only going up and up. And so, and it kind of reflects on our economy. We're focusing more and more on these high skill occupations where just having a high school diploma no longer cuts it. And to an extent, the market is also saturated with a lot of graduates who just has a bachelor's degree. So um, it's gotten a little bit crowded. So the next top point I want to make is that 25% is the number that one would on average see in terms of a wage increase actually from getting a graduate degree. And this was done back in a survey from Georgetown University based on census data, and surveying of individuals who were employed at the time. And again, this is just a sort of an average number of responses that were given in terms of this number. And this could definitely be higher. You're going to graduate school and getting an advanced degree, it's very likely that you're going to see a very big boost in your pay, because you have that much in terms of a skill set to be able to provide an employer. I guess to further drive the point home, I went back this week and actually got back some data from the uh, from the government, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I went and looked at some worker earnings, and these are some median worker earnings that I got for the first quarter of this year. I mean, it's not the best, obviously, with what's going on at the moment, but just to give you sort of perspective on what this means, this 25%. So pretty much all workers 25 and older, it was found that the median wage that I guess we had was about $1,000 a week. For those who have only a high school education, they tended to have much lower earnings, only $768 per week. However, if one has a bachelor's degree, that, as you can see, this is quite a big chunk higher than both just everyone else and high school graduates at $12,036 a week. And advanced degrees, the median earnings there, a huge jump from everyone else, 1604 a week. And if you, I guess, do the math on that, that's around 25%. I think it's like 22% or something like that. But even then, it kind of still holds up true that you're bound to see a pretty big increase in wages when going for an advanced degree. Just to drive it even more home, some of the top 10 of advanced degree earners, so I guess your doctors and lawyers and all that, almost making $4,000 a week. So it's to sort of, yeah, to make the point there, it can be very financially rewarding to go to graduate school and to put up with all the baggage that comes with that. Um, so definitely there's a, think of it as an investment that you're making, that you could make further money down the line. Okay, so I think I drove the point home on why someone would want to go and pursue a graduate degree. So now I want to sort of pivot back to what types of graduate degree programs there are out there. And this is kind of my take on it. I mean, there's ways you can categorize it, um, but sort of this is how I see it in terms of categories that one could get. So the first category that I have is a certificate. So this is something that you might see popping up if you're ever browsing Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that, where they may be picking up a skill, like in this case, a very particular set of skills, like Lean Six Sigma or model-based systems engineering, something that doesn't necessarily involve a breadth of knowledge, but something very to the point and that could be learned in most circumstances on one's own. Then the next category is subject specialization, and this is a deeper dive into a field and say a bachelor's degree, and you tend to pick up some practical industry skills on the side of it. So this could be, like have here your MBA or your master's in science. And so you do some of the specialized, say, research or projects where you get more involved in your field and some of the topics. So say you're a mechanical engineer, you could get more into structure and dynamics and dynamical systems and nonlinear stress or whatever fancies or piques your interest. So, and with that, I guess the next category would be a purely research sort of program where the focus of the program is really to make you the top expert in that field, and it's expecting you to contribute back to, I guess, the body of knowledge in that particular set of fields. So this involves, again, your master's degree, but to a greater extent your PhDs and your doctorates, becoming a doctor and whatnot. So you are contributing to that field, and you're specializing to something, almost spending your entire career doing one thing. Roughly, again, these are categories. You could break them up, and there could be gray areas in between of programs and whatnot. But roughly, this is sort of how I've seen it sort of broken down into. So just to give you some differences in between programs, and this would sort of help you out what am I looking for in a program. And so on the left here, you have a chart of roughly, I mean, it could depend on a lot of things, but for the most part, the differences between some of these programs, as you see here, certificates, a lot of them very short programs, A lot of the time it's for you to gain a particular set of skill that you can use already if you're a working professional, and they usually don't involve anything beyond that. So they don't usually take a long time, even if you're taking one class a week or something like that. They don't usually take a long time. And from there, it goes up. You have your master's and your MBA. In terms of years, this can vary a lot, but I have seen anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5 years. Sometimes it depends how what pace that you're taking your classes at. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have your doctorate degrees where you're dedicating a lot of time not only to classes, but to doing research, to teaching classes, to really honing your skills in that particular subject. And that could take years. In this case, as you see here, it can take anywhere from 5 to 10 years, and maybe even more for to becoming a MD. So apart from that, there's lots of differences between the timing of the program. Costs can vary a lot as well. Some schools, you can go in and get an MBA for $60,000, maybe even less. But say you want to go to Wharton School or Harvard School of Business or something like that, you could be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of these elite schools. And with those, comes a brand recognition that, comes part of the price tag. And so costs per year for programs can vary greatly. Even if you're like an MBA, you're doing technically the same program, these schools can bring a lot of different things to the table that you're going to have to see, is this something that I value, that I'm willing to pay that premium for? The same could be said for engineering and PhDs, but the costs in themselves, they can vary more depending on what you want to do and how much funding there is. And one thing to note is that usually, even though master's degrees tend to be cheaper because it's less time and less classes, and technically you're paying less per year after a certain number of years, you don't receive as much in terms of financial aid and so forth to help you with that, because a lot of PhDs, they receive fellowships and scholarships, and they teach or do research on the side. So it can be kind of iffy when it comes to the financial, making those decisions on those. And there's a lot of differences in programs between schools, as we're kind of very aware now, between online and in-person classes. One of the reasons why I chose USC was because they had a pretty good and robust online program where I was able to take most of my classes online. I mean, I attended some in person, but um, their online class was set up from the get-go right away. There was no bumps or anything. Even was able to take an exam online where they had me go somewhere and they had proctors where you could, watch you while you do your test and do all of that. And that will vary between schools and even within a school between departments. So that's something to just be aware that even though you may be selecting a school, the departments vary in terms of the amenities that they can provide to their students. And again, this is another point, the very levels of sponsorship and support between these schools and departments can vary a lot in the prestige. And if that's important to you, then that's something that one would have to take into account when selecting these programs. Um, now that we've talked a little bit about the differing aspects of the different grad school programs and degrees and so forth, I guess I want to get a little bit more into the application process. I don't necessarily plan to go too much into, say, the life of a graduate student or anything like that. I guess that could be the topic of another video. But I just wanted to go into that decision-making process at the beginning, and the application process in itself is something to keep in mind. Um, so this is a rough applying timeline that we have, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to do this presentation at the moment, because For the most part, you want to begin as soon as you can in terms of getting your application ready and thinking about graduate school, because there's a lot of things that are involved when it comes to, like money. It's kind of like how when you started applying to, your 4-year undergrad in high school, you had to do some applying and thinking and all of that and visiting. It's the same thing. It's just a little bit more involved because more money's on the line, and so there's a lot more things that one needs to take into account. um, so the summer would be a very good time to start researching schools and programs and really narrowing down your short list of schools and programs that you're interested in. And while one has the time, it'd be a good opportunity to also start practicing for the GRE or any other entrance exams, because like the SAT or the ACT back in high school, a lot of schools are starting to move away from the GRE, but still a lot of schools do expect you to have a GRE, taking a GRE and have good scores for that. And from experience, that can make the difference whether you can be a very strong applicant or not, and you don't want to put it off to the end. So starting once you start getting back to school, if you're a student, or once start things start picking up later in the year in the fall, that's when you'll start asking for letters of recommendation and taking some of those entrance exams to sort of give yourself time in case you need to do better, to get your scores back, because it takes a while to get those scores back. And also those letters of recommendation, if you want to, say, ask a professor who might be really busy, and you want to be able to give the best package that you can, and really get letters of recommendation from people who have some weight behind them, like professors or managers or things like that. uh, then by October, November, that's when some of them start becoming due, some of the applications. But then that's when you actually start uh, filling out some of these applications and working on your personal statement, which I wouldn't necessarily put off, because it says a lot about you, and you want to really emphasize why are you doing this, and why you should be chosen for a particular program. And this is the space in which you can do that. And giving yourself some time is definitely a good thing in terms of getting that polished. December and January, that's usually when I've seen a lot of these applications be due. And also a lot of the time where a lot of these scholarships for if you're thinking of doing a PhD or whatnot, some of those are due as well. So, you've already done a personal statement and letters of recommendation. You could sort of piggyback on those and submit applications not only for schools but for scholarships and fellowships as well. And then moving on to the spring, that's when, if say you plan to go to graduate school, you would start applying for FAFSA and start looking at taking tours of these schools. Maybe even if you're not necessarily um, in yet, but say if you have a really strong application and there's a school you really want to go to, it doesn't hurt to take a tour of the program. You could obviously do this way beforehand, but usually the letters that tell you if you're in or not, they usually come in around late March and April time. And as I mentioned there, that's once you have those, then that's when you can sort of make the decision to uh, go with or to decline any offers that you may get. So again, this is a rough applying timeline. It could vary depending on who you are and what time of the year you're thinking of applying, but usually you want to think at least 6 months in advance and start planning that out, because it does get pretty involved, especially if you're applying to a lot of schools.